What if the absolute worst day of your life actually turned out to be the beginning of your real life? It sounds impossible, right? Well, today we're going to dive into the incredible story of Pete Kane, a man whose world was completely shattered by a massive stroke, only for him to rebuild it into something, well, something better. Let's get into it. So let's just start with this quote from Pete himself. It's kind of mind-bending. Don't be sorry. It was a blessing. A blessing? I mean, how on earth could a health crisis that destroyed his business, his marriage, and half of his body's function possibly be a blessing? To understand that, we have to go back to the night everything changed.
All right, so picture this. Pete Kane was the definition of a high-octane guy. He owned a digital marketing agency, and by his own admission, he was a total workaholic, just always pushing, always chasing that next deadline. And on this particular night, he was doing what he always did, working late, trying to wrap up a video project.
And then, bam, a life can unravel in a matter of minutes. At 8:30 p.m., his eyes start to burn. Just a few minutes later, his entire left side just gives out. He's panicking, trying to call his family, but his words are so slurred, they think he's drunk, and they hang up on him. Can you imagine? He's fully aware, completely conscious, trapped as his own body betrays him. He finally manages to force out one single word, stroke. But by then, nearly 20 minutes of brain-saving time are gone, just vanished.
Just surviving that night, that was only the first battle in what was going to be a very, very long war. Waking up in the hospital wasn't the end of the nightmare. It was the beginning of a journey into a life he just didn't recognize anymore. The world he had so carefully built was about to come crashing down around him.
I mean, just look at this contrast. It's staggering. Before the stroke, you have a successful business owner, a runner, a guy who golfed 5 days a week, a husband. And after? The business was lost. He spent 49 days in rehab. His passion, golf, became this frustrating one-handed attempt. His marriage ended. In just a few months, his entire identity was just erased. But here's something you have to understand to really get this story. Underneath that successful exterior, Pete was carrying this secret he'd had for decades. He had severe dyslexia and ADD, and in his own words, he lived in shame. He was haunted by this feeling of being a failure, the guy who flunked out of school and just couldn't measure up. So in the middle of losing literally everything, his health, his job, his relationship, something really unexpected started to happen. In those quiet moments of recovery, a series of profound revelations started to shift his whole perspective on what had happened to him. This was the first spark. His Ukrainian nurse, she pulled him aside and told him something that just cut through everything. She said, "The stroke you had, most people don't survive." She told him an angel was looking after him. And it just hit him. This wasn't just an ending. This was a second chance. But, old habits die hard, especially the ones that feel like they're part of your survival. So even with a traumatic brain injury, Pete, the lifelong workaholic, convinced his doctors to put him back on Adderall. He tried to jump right back on the hamster wheel. But then, during a call with his biggest client, his brain just shut down. He couldn't speak. He was completely overloaded. It was his body basically screaming a message he could no longer ignore. That was it. He knew he had to get clean for good. He made the call to quit, but in a moment of work-fueled panic, he took one last pill, and his whole world just crashed. For weeks, he described his brain as mush, unable to process even the simplest commands. He gave up everything, alcohol, caffeine, Adderall, to just let his mind heal. Months later, he finally agreed to take this 25-minute cognitive test designed for brain injury survivors. And the result? He got a perfect score. He didn't miss a single question. The administrator told him she'd never seen anyone do that before. For the first time in his entire life, Pete Kane, the man who lived in the shadow of failing grades, had gotten an A, and he did it all on his own. It was all the proof he needed. His mind wasn't broken. It was powerful. This incredible victory wasn't just about some test score. It became the bedrock of a completely new philosophy, a new way of thinking, a new way of living his life. He was ready to forge an entirely new mindset from the ashes of the old one. He started living by a principle he now calls mortality motivation. And it's not just a cool phrase, it's this profound, bone-deep clarity you get when you really accept that tomorrow isn't promised. It stops being a scary thought and becomes an incredible source of fuel. This became the new operating system for his life. And this shift was just profound. It changed him from the inside out.
He went from living in fear and shame to living with faith and purpose. Faith, which had always been his backup plan, was now plan A. And maybe most importantly, he finally stopped giving a damn what other people thought of him.
This new mindset led to a whole new set of personal rules. He started reframing crises as just challenges. He committed to living every single day like it was his last. And he found these new outlets for his old drives. Journaling became his new running, a way to process everything. Podcasting became his new golf, a way to connect and compete. He wasn't giving up, he was transforming.
So what does a person do with this kind of profound insight born from such a tragedy? For Pete, the answer was clear. You don't keep it to yourself. You use it to serve others. Today, Pete Kane is a high-performance coach, a podcaster, and a mentor. His new life, his new purpose, was built not in spite of his trauma, but directly because of it. He turned his greatest crisis into his calling. And that really leaves us with a powerful question, doesn't it? Pete's story shows that our deepest wounds can become our greatest assets. It kind of forces us to ask ourselves, what challenge in your own life, big or small, could you reforge into your greatest strength?